The barn was quiet except for the low hum of cicadas outside, the soft groan of wood settling with the evening breeze, and the gentle rhythm of her breathing as she sat in the far corner, her hands folded in her lap as though they alone held the weight of all the years she had carried. She had never thought she would end up here, sitting on a bale of hay beneath a fading sunset, her hair spilling loose from the braid she'd tried to keep tight all day, her heart torn between a fear she could not name and a longing she could no longer deny. He stood a few feet away, broad shoulders leaning against the doorframe, his hat tipped low as though he didn't want her to see the storm in his eyes, but she saw it anyway. She had always seen him, too clearly, too painfully, too much for her own comfort. "I am too old for you," she whispered at last, the words trembling like fragile glass about to break. It was the truth she had carried in silence, the truth she thought would protect them both. She had lived longer, she had seen more winters pass, she had tasted heartbreak and sacrifice, and she had built walls so high around her soul that she believed no one would ever climb them again. He was younger, full of fire, with laughter still warm on his lips and a future unbroken stretching wide before him. She thought she was sparing him from a mistake, from ridicule, from the kind of pain she already knew too well. But before the silence between them could grow heavy enough to swallow her whole, he crossed the barn in 2 steady strides, his boots echoing on the wooden floor, his hand reaching for her chin as though he had every right in the world to lift her gaze toward him. His touch was gentle, reverent, not the hungry grasp of a man chasing desire, but the steady hand of someone who saw the fragile pieces of her heart and wanted nothing more than to put them back together. And when his lips touched hers, soft as the first rain of spring after a long drought, she felt her defenses tremble and crack. "Then let me be young enough," he breathed against her mouth, the words not spoken in defiance but in devotion, not a challenge but a vow. Her heart pounded as if it had woken from a long slumber, startled by the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the years between them were not a curse but a bridge. She pulled back just enough to search his eyes, to see if the sincerity there was real or just a passing fire that would fade with time. But all she found was that same storm she had seen from the first day she met him, a storm that didn't scare her, but made her want to step out into the rain and let it wash her clean. "You don't understand," she tried again, her voice breaking even as she spoke. "People will talk. They'll laugh. They'll say you don't know what you want yet." His hand tightened, gently against hers, grounding her as if he had anchored himself to her very soul. "Let them talk," he said simply. "I've been searching for something real, something that, though they were equals, not separated by years." People talked as people always do. She knew it would only grow louder, harsher, crueler. But when she mentioned this, fear curling in her words, he simply tightened his arm around her shoulders and said, "Let them. We're writing our own story, not theirs." That night, under a blanket of stars brighter than she had ever noticed before, he led her outside, his hand clasped around hers with unwavering certainty. They stood in the open field, the wind tugging at their clothes, the scent of earth and grass filling the air, and he turned to her, his expression serious. "Promise me something," he said, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Promise me you won't push me away again, no matter what people say, no matter what fear tries to whisper to you." She hesitated, the weight of the promise pressing against her chest, but then she looked into his eyes. The eyes of a man who wasn't asking out of naivety but out of love, and she nodded. "I promise," she breathed. His smile broke across the night like dawn itself, and he kissed her then, slow and deep, sealing the vow between them. In that kiss she felt the world quiet, felt the years slip away, felt only the pulse of his heart against hers, and for once she didn't care who might be watching. She didn't care if the stars themselves bore witness and gossiped about the union of two souls who had no business finding each other, but did anyway. All she cared about was that she had found something worth holding on to, something she had thought lost forever. Love had come for her in the most unexpected form, and instead of running, she was learning to stand still and receive it. And for those listening now, for those who feel too late, too broken, too much or not enough, let this story be a reminder that love doesn't follow a schedule, it doesn't check a calendar, and it certainly doesn't care about the opinions of others. Love finds you when it is meant to, and when it does, it demands courage. If this story moved you, If you believe that love is worth fighting for no matter the odds, then stay with us, because more tales of hope, passion, and second chances are waiting here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the chance to believe in love again, because the next story might be the one that speaks to your heart, doesn't burn out with time, something worth fighting for, and I found it in you. She wanted to protest again, to remind him that she carried scars he hadn't seen, stories she couldn't tell, nights she had spent alone wondering if love was a gift meant only for the young. But then he smiled and the barn seemed to glow a little brighter, as if even the dying sunlight wanted to bear witness to this moment. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she felt her heart finally surrender, not to foolishness, but to the truth she had buried too long. Love doesn't ask for permission, doesn't measure itself by years, doesn't bow to judgment. Love simply arrives, uninvited and unstoppable, and demands to be felt. She let herself melt into him, into the warmth of his arms, into the certainty in his embrace that she had not felt in decades. For the first time in years, she stopped thinking about tomorrow, stopped worrying about what others would say, and allowed herself to simply exist in the moment, with him, with this kiss, with the reckless hope that maybe she wasn't too late after all. Outside, the sky deepened into twilight, the stars beginning to pierce the horizon like sparks of promise, and she realized that time didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she had found a love strong enough to silence her fears, a love that made her feel alive again. And as his lips lingered against hers, she whispered the words she never thought she would speak. Maybe, just maybe, you're right. He pulled her closer, holding her as though the years meant nothing, as though he could carry both her past and her future without hesitation. And in that moment she believed him. She believed in them. She believed in love reborn in the most unexpected of places. And to those listening, to those watching this story unfold, let it be a reminder that love doesn't come with an expiration date. It doesn't check your age before knocking on your door, and it doesn't care about the whispers of others. It cares only that you are brave enough to open your heart again. If you felt this story touch something inside you, if you believe that love deserves a chance no matter what the world says, then stay with us. Because more stories like this, stories of hope, healing, and unexpected love are waiting here for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a chance to believe in love again. The morning light spilled across the horizon like liquid gold, seeping into the barn through cracks in the wood, brushing against her face as though the dawn itself wanted to wake her gently. She stirred, her head resting against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, anchoring her in a place she never thought she would belong. For a moment she thought it was a dream, his arms draped around her like a shield, his warmth soaking into her bones, the faint scent of leather. Hey, and something uniquely him lingering in the air. But when she opened her eyes and saw him looking down at her with that same steady fire, she knew it was real. He smiled, slow and soft, the kind of smile that carried no rush, no demand, just pure presence. And her heart stumbled all over again. "Morning," he whispered, his voice husky, his hand brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. She closed her eyes briefly, savoring the tender gesture before whispering back, "Morning." And then the weight of reality pressed in. He was still young, still full of days ahead, while she carried more behind her than she wanted to admit. She pulled back slightly, shame flickering in her gaze, but he didn't let her retreat far. "Don't," he said firmly, reading her thoughts before she could voice them. "Don't you dare run from this. Not again." She bit her lip, her mind warring with her heart, but he leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. "I don't care how many years you've lived. I don't care about the voices outside this barn. All I care about is this, right here, us." His certainty wrapped around her like sunlight, melting the frost of doubt, yet she still trembled. "But I've lived long enough to know the world is cruel," she whispered. "People won't understand. They'll judge you, judge me, say we're foolish." He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Let them judge. They don't have to live my life, I do, and I choose you." The raw conviction in his words sent shivers racing down her spine. For so long she had believed she was unworthy of being chosen, unworthy of love that wasn't weighed down by compromise or convenience. But here was this man, younger, reckless in the best way, daring her to step out of the shadows of her fear and into the light of something new. She studied him, his hands calloused from work, his eyes sharp yet gentle, his jaw set with determination, and wondered how she could have thought herself too old for someone whose soul seemed older than his years. Perhaps youth wasn't about numbers, but about the way one lived, the way one loved, and in that moment, he made her feel like time itself had bowed down before them. They spent the morning talking in hushed tones, laughter spilling out between confessions, stories of his childhood mingling with stories of her past, pain meeting healing, and every word weaving a thread that bound them tighter. At one point he reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips and pressing a kiss to the faded lines etched by years of work and worry. "These hands," he murmured, "have done more living than mine ever could. I don't see age, I see strength." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming flood of being seen, truly seen, after so long of being invisible. And in that sacred space she let herself believe that maybe she wasn't too old. Maybe love had come not late, but right on time, yet beyond the barn walls.